So, as we're thinking about training our staff in all of the different pieces that we've talked about in this course, there's a couple different ways that you can reach them as you are training in behavior management and creating a culture of promoting positive behavior. What we're going to talk about in this video is new staff orientation, observation and feedback, individual meetings, and group meetings. I want you to think about, is there any other way that you reach staff as you're training them, as you're thinking about continuous quality improvement, different pieces like that? One thing that somebody brought up at the webinar was that they send their staff emails because they have trouble finding times where they can all meet. So they send emails with, here's something that I've noticed, and here's some resources that we can talk about. And then she's able to check in with them really briefly after when they're at work, right? You got to make it work in any way that you can. So as we think about new staff orientation, it's really important to set people up for success by training them in behavior management up front. So with these new staff, we're going to be clear about expectations from the beginning and understanding organizational culture. And when I say organizational culture, one example could be, when do they come to the director with a behavior problem? What steps should be in place and have been taken before the problem escalates to involving the director? And so you should be clear about that from the beginning. I would also always be very clear about your expectations about staff's interaction with the children early on. I know that I have had staff come to my program and I suddenly hear them yelling, and I'm, talk to them afterwards like, it's not appropriate to yell at kids. We don't need to raise our voice. And they said, I'm sorry, this is just how teachers always dealt with me, and so it's hard for me to understand how I can have more of a conversation. And so being clear about that expectation up front and then providing them with the skills to do it is so important. If there's time, which I understand there's not always, it's always fantastic to have a new staff shadow another staff or watch you model how to run a lesson, how to manage the group. And when you're doing that, it's really important to have a pre and post meeting with the new staff. That pre meeting will be talking about what's going to happen, what they're going to see, what they should keep an eye out for. And the post meeting should be asking, what did you notice? And allow them to kind of say, here are some things that I saw, here's some questions I have, and really expand on that. With a new staff member, it's really important to give them the training they need. This training can be done online, it can be done in person. Show them some examples. Show them some short videos and then follow up. There are a lot of great resources on YouTube, including BossNet's YouTube page, where there are real activities being run, and a teacher has been kind enough to film themselves and then put it up online for other educators to watch and learn. And so that can give somebody who is a learner that needs to see it first something to look at, because there are a lot of times where in out of school time, this is their first time working with kids in this environment. And so they're going to need those examples. And always follow up with them. Ask them what they learned. Ask them what they noticed. With your new staff also, it's really important to think about what kind of learner they are, right? We have auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners. If somebody learns best by doing, they probably won't want to shadow for very long. They're going to say, throw me in, I'm going to try it out. Maybe I'll fail fast, but that's okay. They need to do it to really understand it. Others might be more visual and they want to see those example videos or whatever it might be. And the last thing I always like to remind people of are attitudes are caught, not taught. So when we're thinking about that culture of promoting positive behavior, when we're thinking about behavior management strategies, you can say all you want about what's going to happen, but that attitude for how children should be treated in your program, how these situations should be handled, you need to demonstrate that positive attitude, and everybody on your team should as well. So, when we're thinking about situational leadership, these new staff will a lot of times be in this telling section. Not always, but if we're thinking at that very base level, remember we're going to give direct instructions, really focus on tasks, do a lot of follow up, and always be encouraging and motivational. Another way that we reach staff and provide feedback with them and give them more skills is with observation and feedback. This can be done in a couple ways. It can be very formal, where you're planning to come in, sit down, watch a whole activity, and then give feedback. It might be more informal, where you're in the room because you have time to get away from your desk. You don't have any meetings, no parents are calling you. It's a great day. So you get to go and participate in an activity. And then you're going to give feedback about it afterwards because you were in it, you saw it, you're going to have something to say. If you are planning the observation and it's a time to sit down and it, is maybe their EC bi-monthly one, whatever it might be, always use a standard observation or assessment tool so that they know what is being focused on. If they have previous goals that they've set, maybe they said, I've noticed that I spent a lot of time talking to the group as a whole, but not a lot of times the individual kids. Then say, all right, great, then I'm going to focus on that goal during my observation, and I'll still observe the whole time, but I will keep an eye on that. Also, it's really important to have feedback afterwards. Doesn't help a lot to observe and then just say, great job, or I went all right. That doesn't give them any information. So have that clear goal for the conversation for feedback. And as you're doing it, make sure that you're focusing on strengths, because it is very nerve-wracking to have somebody observe you in any situation. And so it's important to say what you noticed went well and why, and then be very clear about it. So I might say, I noticed that when John was up and running around in circles around the group while you were trying to explain the STEM activity, that you never raised your voice and that you praised the kids who were doing a good job. And then he noticed that and sat down. And so I really appreciate how you are validating good behavior, because then you saw that that made the difference and he wanted to be validated for his good behavior too. So you're saying something they did well. And maybe they only did that because you were in the room. It's very possible that, they might have gotten really upset and said, nobody's in here, it's fine. Hey, sit down. But by saying, I noticed it, it was good, and here's why it was important that it was good, then you're validating what they're doing and you're pointing out what they should do more of. And so being very strengths based. As you're being aware of where the staff is on the different matrices that we talked about, there might be more telling. There might be, saying, I noticed that when Susan got really upset and went into the corner of the room and just was crying, that you went over and talked to her, but she didn't want to talk to you, so you walked away. Tell me more about that. And so asking them to kind of share their thoughts with you, that will be someone who's maybe further along on the matrix, that they have more skills. Um, and if they, because you don't want to put somebody in a situation where they're saying, yeah, I didn't know how to do that, and now I feel kind of bad about it. So instead, you can ask them, you know, well, what do you think you could do? One of my ideas was that you could ask her best friend to go over and sit with her, or you could bring the project to her. So if she needs some space to be alone, then she can be. And so really give that feedback in a positive way that they'll feel good about. So conversation is really the best way once you're past that telling and directing leadership part of the model. With this observation and feedback, that is coaching. And I really love this quote to make us really think about what is best to support the staff. So, coaching to extend learning includes helping a teacher put goals into words and then breaking goals into clear and achievable steps. It means pointing out moments of effectiveness as a teacher moves towards his or her goal and describing why his or her actions and words matter to children. It means inviting him or her to think about his or her intentional decision making. Once we're on to this section of staff being more motivated, having more skills, being more involved in their own professional development and decisions, then we want them to start thinking about it. We want to give them the words to say, here's what I'm doing well, here's what I want to work on a little bit more. So when you're coaching to extend learning, you're going to focus on the goals that you've talked about, and you're going to really notice moments of effectiveness. And you're going to use a lot of prompts and questions to encourage thinking. When I'm doing this, I always walk into my post-observation meetings with a set of questions that I'm planning to ask. Um, it might be here's some. So when things go well, you might say, what needs did this lesson meet for your kids? What enabled it to be so successful? Is there anything else? And so really getting them to think about, all right, what specifically went well? Why was it so successful? And what things did you have in place that helped you be successful? So you're getting them to be very specific and think through their teaching in a very specific way. And if things don't go so well, that's fine. Keep them focused on the positive. What did you try that worked, even if only a little bit? And they might say, the kids were just not listening. I tried to tell them that we were going to play a game, but they wouldn't sit down. And, I just was so frustrated that we didn't even get to play the game. And say, okay, but what did you try that worked? Even if only a little bit. Well, I used the attention getter where I clapped my hands in a rhythm, and a couple of the kids did that and came and sat down. Fantastic, that's great. So, you know, how did you manage to keep things from getting any worse? Right? These sound tough, and these are going to be tough conversations, and that's why you wait to have them with these more open-ended questions with staff who are further along in their development. But they will get them thinking and will get them motivated to try these ideas that they come up with on their own. When you're having those quick feedback sessions, though, because I understand there's not always time for these long conversations, it's important to be really specific about your feedback. So it might be something along the lines of, while I was watching your literacy activity the other day, I really appreciated how you um, use the book and you let the kids pass it around so they could look at the pictures and with the extra books that you had. That was really great because it kept the kids focused so that they had something to touch. It was more tactile. They could see the pictures since and they were able to be more hands-on with the book. What do you think could make this activity more exciting next time? What would make it more exciting for you and for the kids? And so that, is quick, right? You're saying, here's what you did, here's what went well, here's why it was good. And let me push you just that little bit further. We can also have a lot of these conversations in individual meetings, but I would really encourage you to have regular individual meetings so that the staff aren't worried about coming in anytime you say, hey, can I talk to you for a few minutes? That they're not like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Did I do anything wrong? But those individual meetings will really give you that time to make sure that you're focusing on the positives. Because if nothing's gone wrong lately, then you're going to say, hey, I've really appreciated how much you've been doing more social emotional stuff with your kids lately. Tell me more about that. I'm really interested to hear more. I haven't gotten to see it all. And so those individual meetings let them think about their strengths. It also lets them bring any questions or concerns they have to you in maybe a more private way. When you start an individual meeting, I always encourage you to know your end goal going into the meeting. It might be that you want to find out more about their social emotional curriculum that they're using. It might be that you really need to come up with a solution for why their activities are taking 10 minutes to start when they really should just be quick. Here's what we're doing next. All right, let's go. So have that end goal in mind. And then when you're talking with the staff, make sure that you're always thinking about where are they on these different matrices? Where are they in situational leadership? Where are they in that will skill matrix? The last piece that we're going to think about today is group meetings. During group meetings, I like to always keep continuous quality improvement at the front and center. Talk about what people are doing well, and then take that time to say, all right, maybe things aren't going so well here, but let's problem solve it together. We have all the best minds right here in our program. Let's figure it out. You're always going to want to walk away from group meetings with a clear understanding of goals and steps. So maybe you came up with a plan to say, we're one of the examples that we had from the webinar group was somebody said that they really liked an idea they heard where the staff are going to and the kids are going to share kudos with one another. So each week, the kids and the staff are going to be able to write on sticky notes kudos to um, Jack for sharing his toys at recess, for example. And so you say, okay, great. We love that idea. What are our goals going to be? And that goal might be we're going to each at least do one per week. Great. You can also utilize group meetings to continue professional development. I always encourage you to bring new resources or videos. Take some time to watch those videos that we talked about earlier and say, what did you notice in here? What are some of your thoughts? Or bring new games to play together and say, would this work for your group? What do you think? Or ask the staff to bring problems to one another. But utilize those group meetings to think about how can we continuously improve our program for the kids and for the staff. So all of this information in this course has touched on a few different pieces. We've thought about um, promoting positive behavior, how to handle situations where things don't go so well. And then we've thought about how do we support our staff best in these different areas. And so I provided a worksheet for you in the course room, and I really encourage you to utilize it to think about how can I work on behavior management strategies with my team throughout their development. So how do I think about it in terms of the orientation? Is my orientation covering this information? Should I do anything differently? Um, do I want to start bringing videos that I find online to our group meetings every month so that we can talk about them? Do I want to set up individual meetings so that I can really talk with my staff every 2 weeks about what's going well, what's going not so well? Will I set up a plan where there's going to be a scenario that I present at group meetings about a behavior that we've noticed lately and we brainstorm how to best, you know, respond to it? Am I going to have my new staff shadow somebody if they're available? What does that look like? Am I going to do more regular observations? Am I going to set my own personal goal to be that I'm going to give more specific feedback to my staff? But I want you to take that time, utilize that worksheet to really give your some time to brainstorm and think it through.